And it's 7:03. So thank you, Fred. So welcome everybody. Thank you guys. I just asked those who joined a little earlier to be kind to me because this is my first meeting as the chairperson. I'm going to try to keep it moving forward and see how much we can get done tonight. So first order of business. Actually, I think I'm gonna take the minutes. No, let's dispense with the minutes right now, even though we have guests. Has everybody read the minutes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to approve June 8th and July 14th minutes? I'll do these.
Moved. Second.
Thank you. So moved. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Excellent. That was my first official business.
Good job.
So we have a lot. Second up on Maurice's Campground, we have a discussion with Farouk and Nancy Najmi. Did I pronounce that correctly? We have Jay Norton.
Najmi, yeah.
We have Jay Norton here. We sent a lot of information out. I'm sorry that you guys were receiving information kind of piecemeal, but there was a lot of stuff coming in last minute. And I think what I want to do tonight is just remind everybody there's a lot of information going around town. There's a lot of information in the documents that I sent out. So the purpose for discussion tonight is to basically go over the information we have regarding purchase of Maurice's Campground. And I just want everybody to remember, because it's going to be easy to kind of go far afield on this, that we want to look at this basically from the financial standpoint and the financial viability of the campground. So Nancy and Farouk have put together a spreadsheet on, is that where we want to start? They put together a spreadsheet of from the P&L, from the P&L that was given to us by the Gothiers, that was shared with the town. And they have been compiling their spreadsheet with numbers and assumptions going forward for the 6 years, for the next 3 years, right? 2022, 23, 24, of what it would cost to operate the campground, the property. So I would like to introduce them, and then Jay actually is here to talk about some of the overlays for what he sees as DPW expenses. And then we have who else do we have speaking for the campground or about the campground?
Well, I'm here about it, but I don't intend to speak unless it becomes necessary.
Okay, so yep, and Gary Sorkin's here, and Harry, thanks for showing your face. I was looking, I got a lot of blank screens. So why don't we start, if it's okay with Farouk and Nancy, to talk about the operating expenses that they came up with based on the spreadsheet that was all provided to all of you. Is that fair? All right, let's give them the floor.
Okay. We took all those raw numbers and put them on a spreadsheet for 2019, 20, and 21. And then for 2022, in most cases, we took the average of the 3 years because things varied. They didn't go up every year because of COVID. That changed things. And except for utilities. For utilities, we picked the highest value year. And in some cases for oil and propane and electricity, we put a higher value based on our talks with John Gothier. And that's what we have in the column for 2022 for all of the expenses. And then each year following, we increased the expenses by 4% each year. For the income, we took the numbers, we did a similar thing. We separated out from the store income, the seasonal campground income, the transient campground income, and the cottages, yeah. And we got the values for the cottages and the transient campground from the website and the rates, making some assumptions of 80% different occupancy rates for the cottages versus the transient campground, but around 80% in the summer. It's listed somewhere. And our assumptions we went over with John Gauthier, and he felt that they made sense. In his P&L document, he just had the total rent lumped there, and that's why we pulled it out, because we were trying to compare the different scenarios, whether we operate the store or not the store, whether the cottages are operated, or whether just the seasonal campgrounds. The seasonal rentals that for 2022 were the actual rentals, because before May even starts, those are all reserved, and the first deposits are paid already by May. So those numbers are much, very, very confident. And the others we're confident in because we met with John Gauthier, and he said that looked correct. That looked correct there. So then, with
Nancy,
those,
can I ask a quick question? There's an
Yeah.
obvious drop of about $250,000 from 2021 to 2022. Did you get an explanation on why that was?
there was a what?
There's a drop from 794,000 for seasonal campground in 21 to 540,000 in 22, which is pretty huge. Any explanation for why that happened?
Let me take a look
You
there.
have to go down.
No, it's at the top.
I'm gonna take a guess on that, Fred. I may take a guess on 2020, 2022, that they don't have their, that they don't, and again, if this helps, I'm not sure, but they will not have realized any of their transient income yet, because they still can have overnights and campers. So I don't think 2022 is finished yet.
No,
Oh,
but this is only the
also-
seasonal number I'm talking about, not the transient income.
Well, if you look in on the original Gauthier's, they didn't separate things out. So
Okay.
all of the camping is under seasonal.
Oh, my bad. You're right.
Yeah.
Thank-
And 2022, we broke it out. And so 168,000 plus 5,000 plus 540,000 comes closer. And then the cabins down below, I'm not seeing them on my spreadsheet. Right.
So I took a wild guess at that one.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. But yes, so for 2022, we tried to separate out these incomes so that when we were comparing scenarios and we're deciding how to run the campground, depending on what kind of response we get for leases and management, maybe we could only run the seasonal, or maybe the seasonal and transient. But with these numbers separated this way, we felt it was easier to analyze what the bottom lines would be for each of those different sections. And so do you have, we also, yeah, I guess that's it. And we also have the store income comes from the P&L provided by the Gauthiers, and that one we did do an average of the 3 years for 2022.
2022 was a maximum of the 3 years.
Okay.
We picked the maximum.
Okay.
And then the remaining 3 years are with the 4% increase over the projected 2022, which is the maximum of the previous 3 years.
So can I jump in on the income line and just ask a question on the income? So the assumption of the increasing income is, and I know that these are assumptions, but I looked at this a little bit differently, because if there are, and correct me if I'm wrong, because it wouldn't be the first time I would be incorrect. If there are leases, multi-year leases where people just have the opportunity to renew or not renew, my assumption would be for declining income, because as we got closer to the time where we were going to convert to something, or people would have to move out, that those long-term tenants and trailers would start to look for other opportunities at other campgrounds prior to the 6th year. So my assumption when I did that was that the revenues would actually decline over the 6 years based on runoff.
That could be true, but what John Gothier had said was the surrounding campgrounds, if you look them up, their annual fee is substantially higher. I don't have it written down, but one of the ones in Truro, it was, while Wellfleet, Maurice's was $4,700 for the season. One of them in Truro was up to $8,500 for the season. Atlantic Oaks in Eastham was also much higher, and they were experiencing much higher jumps. If we're doing 4% a year, what we are charging is going to be, you know, considerably less. So we probably would still get seasonal workers and other people availing those campsites, those trailers.
Okay, thanks.
So some of the details behind our assumptions and calculations are at the bottom of the spreadsheet if you need to look at the details. And each of these cells are taking into account those assumptions if you need to go to that level of detail.
Are there other particular questions or things you would like us to speak about in this spreadsheet?
On this income section, I'm all set. Does anybody have any other, on the income section, I have some other questions on expenses and a couple of other things. Does anybody else from the group have any?
Kathy,
Yep.
Harry has his hand up.
Okay, I can only see their screen. So yes,
Okay. So just very quickly, that $540,000 campground seasonal, that matches very closely the number that the Gouthiers gave us with the purchase and sale agreement back in April
Yes.
for 128 campsites.
Right. So we're basing it on the assumptions that the parameters that we
That
got from-
actual,
Yeah.
yes, those are the redacted reservations.
That's correct. I redacted all of them and
Yeah.
put it in a spreadsheet.
Harry,
Yeah.
did you look at the leases? Is that declining? Is that assumption for a declining revenue incorrect in any way, shape, or form, or is that a reasonable possibility?
I don't have any basis for commenting on that. All, excuse me, all I had was the reservations for 2022, and there were 128 separate pieces of paper, actually.
Yeah, I had those. I didn't rip them apart.
Yeah,
Okay,
well, I
thank you.
did. Okay.
Karen, I'm sorry, I can't get a gallery up for some reason. So if you can alert me if I'm missing anybody, that would be, oh, hang on, let me see if I can get this. So,
No problem.
anybody else have any questions?
Well, I just wanted to find, so this is just a projection of 4% each year, right?
Yes.
Okay, has anybody done any comparison? You just rattled off a couple of other campgrounds that have higher fees than Maurice's. So that would mean that theirs looks to be the lowest right now on the Cape in terms of fees?
It seems to be the lowest in the region of the private campgrounds, and I'm not sure what Wellfleet Woods is charging, or the Dunes, but there were at least 3 or 4 that we looked at that were considerably higher for the seasonal rental.
Okay, so are you going to use that information to perhaps readjust the fees instead of going with the 4%? I mean, let's just say conceivably the town owns it, then we can change the fee structure. They're not set in stone.
They're
So
not.
is anybody there doing that on your large committee there? Trying to come up.
You know what? We are not economists, so we are not doing that.
Okay, so I'd make the recommendation that you would probably come up with some opportunities to raise fees. Because it sounds to me like they're undervalued. Based on what you're saying, but I'm just assuming that.
Well,
So
I
a
guess
recommendation I would have is that you come up with a comparison and the potential to increase fees so that we can increase revenue.
at the same time, I guess we don't want to increase it and sort of shut out the vulnerable people who are using this for their
Right, I understand
residents,
that, but it
the
still
employees.
is, it's a big undertaking for the town to take this on. So it's just a recommendation on my part.
And I think we were also just trying to be conservative at this end and not be so optimistic that we shoot ourselves in the foot. But I think when in the next step, one of our other documents is the suggestions that the preferred option is that we go for leasing it. And then when the documents are prepared, whether it's an RFP or whatever it is called, that you putting this out to lease, that there be sort of a minimum bid, and that minimum bid would be sort of based on our best estimates. Being conservative for our benefit, but hopefully, not so conservative that we lose money, but not frivolous that we lose money in the other direction.
We
I understand.
also want to take stock of John Gauthier's and the Gauthier's experience running the campground, and if they've we definitely got the impression that they were not inclined as they were operating it to increase the fees dramatically. They've gradually increased it, and so that's one other reason. And the one Nancy mentioned, that we don't want to make it difficult for the people who are used to camping there.
Yeah, I guess this isn't exactly echoing what Stephen was saying, but it may be coming at it from a different perspective. Kathy had asked if we had any questions about the revenue or the income. And my question was going to be also around the assumption of a 4% increase, kind of across the board, because it trickles down into the expenses as well. And that is certainly a conservative guesstimate for a number of cost items these days, 4% annually. But to the point that Stephen was making as well, when we met with John Gauthier, he indicated that at least one other campground nearby was charging in excess of $8,000 for what they're charging $4,700 for. So there is some room there,
Yes.
at least for the seasonal rentals. I don't know about the transient ones, and that's a separate issue. But I think there might be some value, and I mean value not only in terms of understanding the economics better, but also in terms of selling the proposal to the town and having a couple of different scenarios, from the most conservative and charitable to the people who are living there, to the most charitable to the town in terms of managing debt. Because the one thing the Gauthiers are not doing, that we will be doing, is paying down debt off of the back of the revenues. And where they do take money, presumably for themselves, so will we. You note, I think, in one of your documents that there is money left after expenses and whatever to pay the town, but it assumes a certain rate for the operator. And until we get a bid, we don't know what that rate's going to be and what they're going to expect, or how much they're going to want to raise rates to say, well, we can't do it at this level, but for $5,500 or $6,000 a year, maybe we'll take the job on. So if we can anticipate those kinds of questions, I think we're in a better position to respond, for example, to bids that come in from potential operators.
Okay. Yeah.
Kathy,
Yep,
Harry has his hand up.
Harry, go ahead. Thanks, Karen.
A
Yep.
couple of very quick comments. I think the purpose of the exercise was to take a very conservative look at this to make sure it was viable. To the extent there are opportunities to improve the revenue, the town should look at taking them. And from my experience with commercial leases, certainly if we were going to lease this to a developer, an operator, I'd expect to see a lease payment with a percentage revenue component, so that if the operator did raise the rates, the town would share in that. I don't want to see it leased out for a fixed price and then have the rates jacked way up. But that's really flexibility going forward. I think the goal here was to make sure that, that this will have a positive cash flow. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. So I have a, go ahead, Bob, go ahead.
I think another opportunity would be to extend the season. And I think it's been the way it is now because of the possible freezing of the water system. You could start a little earlier and end a little later, which would increase your revenues.
So there's a couple of things on here that I saw, and I'm just going to go over. I'm going to go to the broader document because there are a couple of things when the revenue has from your spreadsheet has been mentioned in other documentation, and being extremely conservative, I'm going to just kind of dive in here. I think the store. Well, I'm going to talk about the store last. But assuming that the town is going to take this over, there is a net income at the end that we're talking about, a revenue stream. But I don't see anywhere where the taxes of $20,000 to $25,000 for property taxes have been subtracted for that. So I think that needs to kind of come out because it won't be paying the real estate taxes to the town anymore. So that's kind of a net loss.
Right. We wondered about that at one point, and initially we had it in, and then it was, well, that doesn't make sense. But, because I was thinking, is it moving money from one pot to another? But I guess the other way you could look at it is the income stream is over $25,000
Yeah,
anyway.
so that $20,000 is I mean, you can't really consider that revenue because that real estate tax is actually going to be lost to the town because the town will not be collecting that.
Right.
So that's a net to the town that won't be collected. I think the income, the store, I think the wages were very conservatively plugged in for the store. And the fact that the store is that you have an increase in cost of goods, I understand that it's probably going to be open more, but you estimate it, and I understand that these are all assumptions. But at $15 an hour, I mean, I believe we just raised our beach wages to 22 this year and had a hard time attracting people at that. So I think the 15 is low on the store revenues. And I don't see a lot of, when you pull the store out separately, there's not a lot of meat there. Would there be a possibility to carve that store out and sell it immediately upon the town buying it? And Harry, maybe you can speak a little to that, because there's some debt reduction right there. There's income from the town, sales, property taxes from whoever buys that store, and somebody who can run it so the town won't be in the business of retail.
Yeah, just a couple of comments again. That is a strategy. It may turn out, depending on what we learn from other campground operators, that the store really has a synergy with the campground that would make it important for them to stay together. Technically, there's no impediment to subdividing off a couple acres and selling it. And just one other note on the real estate taxes. If the town operates the facility, there won't be a tax. If the property is leased to somebody else for commercial purposes, the Nancy Vale has told us that the property will be assessed, the leasehold interest will be assessed, and there'll be a real estate tax paid. So depending on the model of operation, that tax could continue to be an expense or it could not be an expense, depending on what happens.
Okay, that's good to know. So then the other big concern, and I'm going to stop talking, is that I have the DPW and I have Jay's, and Jay did a great job in costing and then including his increases to 30% contingency fee on that. So if, again, going back to the revenue number that's been mentioned in the documentation, I don't see where, oh, I have two questions. I don't see where those those assumptions for the DPW immediate outlays have been subtracted from that revenue stream
On this revenue stream?
on the, what has been represented as a net gain to the town.
Are we talking
No.
about the capital expenses?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
did not put the capital expenses here, so, but we have on the other summary document, it does talk, like before leasing it, it does, we would take into consideration, of course, the capital costs, and that's a big way of sort of figuring out what would be the minimum bid is recognizing the cap. So we originally did put the
Yeah.
6-year capital costs underneath the it's up a
Repairs-
little bit,
repairs
under
and ma-
repairs and maintenance. And
Oh, there we go.
we
See,
were told to remove them
These
from
these
this.
blank lines
Well,
starting.
Okay,
from
those
this
are the
one.
capital repairs. Okay, good.
Yeah.
thank
Yeah,
you.
so
So they
We
are
have-
not in there, yep.
Yeah,
And then my one last question, and then I'll be quiet. Does the, and Harry, I don't know if you know this, does the campground have to pay a rooms tax, 14.45%? Did we,
I do not know.
okay, because I didn't see, so that's a 14.45 and assuming, assuming how that structure is going to be, whether it's a lease or an own, that's a state tax, so that might be another decrease in the revenue.
I don't know, let's
But-
put the taxes on.
But if it's if it's going to be paid in the future, it would be being paid now because it's the same transaction.
Yeah, that's why I didn't see it being paid now anywhere, but I didn't really, I mean, I've seen the original P and L and I was just questioning that because that would, I just questioned whether that was an inadvertent omission on the original P and L.
so
I know what Nancy and Farouk were working from.
Yeah,
all the taxes listed here are the ones that we got from John Gauthier.
Yeah.
And it did not list a room tax, but you're saying that if it is leased, that could potentially be something we'd have to pay? Or the lessee
I
would
don't
have
know
to,
whether the campgrounds have to do it. I know they might on their cabins and not on their trailers. I don't know what the rules are for that, and I didn't have any opportunity to look, so, but that's it
So,
for me.
but
If I-
Kathy, what Harry pointed out, if they were subject to that, it would be included in some of these figures right now.
Yep.
Right, Harry?
But that's why I said I was wondering if that was just that was an inadvertent omission from the.
Or were you
original.
thinking of using the room tax as additional revenue? Is that why you brought it up?
No, it's 14.9%. I just wanted to make sure that if it happened to be omitted, that we were considering, that we were taking that into consideration in the overall revenue.
So the question should be asked of the Gothiers, are they subject to the room tax? If somebody could ask them that question and we could figure that out, because then we don't consider it as a revenue source.
so,
That's gonna go to the state and not the town.
okay.
so all the taxes that the Gauthiers have been paying over the years are listed, but in the rows under taxes. And it did not list a room tax unless it's with a different name that we don't associate with room tax.
Thank you. I'm all set with my questions. They have been answered sufficiently. Anybody else have anything? And again, I can't see everybody if you're raising your hand.
I got a couple questions, but I'll wait
Go
if
ahead.
anybody else wants to go.
Mine is a pretty
Go ahead.
simple one, I think, under, in a few places, but for example, on line 11, under partial hookups, the $168,000 is computed with a function that is like E114 times 15 times 105 times 117 plus. Could you just speak for a second to what that function was intended to capture?
It had a percent occupancy and the rate of the partial hookup and the number of the partial hookup and
And the duration.
the duration, yes.
So you used a function just because it was easier, because you could have just said this times that times that. So
We did it so
the way
that
I
if
understand functions in Excel, they have specific.
So no, we didn't use any functions. What this is saying is that each of these are referencing a cell at the bottom. And the reason why we did it that way is so that if any of those assumptions change, we don't have to go hunt them down and change every place. It will automatically update itself. So for instance,
114,
114, here we go.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I got that part. Thanks. I think you answered my question. I think Excel just kind of sticks it in as a function. Once you set it up, it's fine. I understand. It's just, thank you.
It was just our way, if we were going to be editing it, because we made it as a first pass, that we would then edit everything appropriately.
So if
Right.
the number of partial hookups changed from 40 to 50, we wouldn't have to go find and update all over the spreadsheet. We just change this number and it will fix itself everywhere.
Right, right. Stephen, I cede my question. to
Sure.
you.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for very extensive documents. It's refreshing to see. Just on the being able to lease this, if it is, let's just say it works out and you do find somebody to lease it, who's responsible for the capital cost? The
The
zoning
town,
director put together, the town would still be?
yeah, so there's some assumption, and this is captured in a different document that was, let's see, I have a PDF open,
you
one sec.
just-
Yeah, don't we have a PDF
No,
open?
it was up top.
So this was captured under assumptions. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, here we go. So no financial
Listen.
projections. Here we go. Where are the assumptions? Here we go. Yeah. So the leaseholder would be responsible for all repairs and maintenance that are not considered capital expenses. But so what's the definition of capital versus just non-capital normal repairs? We picked a number. If it's under 3,000, then it is just routine maintenance and not considered capital.
Okay. So ideally, it'd be
Mary,
great
did
to
you
get
have-
somebody to lease. Are there,
Yes.
do you think is there an interest out there? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's great that you got 3 options here, but
There's certainly enough meat there that there may be, interested parties.
an interest in doing it.
Yeah, so, we think that again, under the assumptions that I was showing earlier, let me go back to that for 1 second. So the assumption is that the minimum bid that we should set is 150% of the expected operating costs, so that there is some
Including capital expenses.
yes, including capital expenses. So that we're sure to be able to have a reasonable profit after.
Well, we're not losing money.
Exactly.
Right. So the only other thing I noticed is I do notice in here, you do have a blurb about the 3 acres that could be going for affordable housing. What other types of projects are you considering with the rest of the land?
I don't think our group is
Chartered.
chartered to do that, and
Yeah,
certainly not.
Okay.
I don't know if that, I think that's a little further down the road.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, we're going to be voting on this in what, September?
We're gonna
yes.
be voting on the purchase, but I don't think we're gonna be voting on the purchase, but there's a lot of more questions with design and a lot of other questions. Oh, Rich has his hand up. Go ahead, Rich.
I could just speak a little bit to it. I mean, right now, this is, the restriction possibility through the CPC is an avenue for us to reduce the overall purchasing cost for the town, for the taxpayers. And basically, the idea is to put a restriction on a vacant part of the campground operation right now. So we identified 3 acres behind the store that has no operation right now. It's not part of a campsite rental. It's not part of the, excuse me, I should say the trailer park rental. And thank you, Gary, for weighing in too. So right now there is no anticipation to do any development within that affordable or within that restriction right now, but in the future, within the 6 years, the plan is to encompass that into basically up to 100% AMI affordable, housing opportunity within that housing restriction there.
So the full 30 acres will be earmarked for affordable housing in the future. It's just you've carved out 3 acres right now, right?
Correct.
Okay, so when you talk about restrictions, what are you saying? That like the rest could be left restricted to just open space? Or is the long-term concept to develop that whole 30 acres as affordable housing is what I'm asking.
Gary, you want to answer that one?
Sure, I did raise my hand here. So the intent is for the purchase is for both workforce and affordable housing. So generally speaking, workforce is at a higher median income percentage than affordable housing. I don't think there is any commitment as to the whole 30 acres. And that some of that land would be restricted by wetland and other considerations. But the conception of why are we buying this is to provide land for affordable and workforce housing. The 3 acre restriction is simply it's a requirement of the state CPA code that any land that is purchased with CPA funds has to be restricted for affordable housing. In the case of CPA, the restriction is at 100% of median income. And just as an aside for folks, the median income in Barnstable County has shot up significantly in the last year as a result of the influx of higher wage earners. And so the people that would be eligible under that 100% restriction would encompass many, if not all, of the working folks in Wellfleet. So it's not really very limited. The 80% and below, which is typical in affordable housing, may come into play when we actually go out to bid for a developer, but the restriction on the land itself, the deed restriction, would be at 100%.
Okay, so let's stop. How much further is this going to get us to our goal of at least 10% affordable housing? Do you have any idea?
Yes, I mean, as you know now, I'll just give you a broad, right now we're at 2.5%. We have in the works the 95 Lawrence project with 46 units, which are essentially double the number of units that we would have available. We also have the Payne Hollow project, which is actively in the works now, as well as a few Habitat for Humanity. So we're probably going to be, without any development at Maurice's, somewhere in the 5 to 6% range. And depending upon the number of units that we develop, would bring us much closer to the 10% state target.
Okay. Do you have any idea of what this is going to cost to do? I mean, I know 6 years is a long time, so you can't really be accurate on how much it's going to cost in terms of putting in this affordable housing, but do you have a general idea?
Let me give you 2 answers. Right now, we're looking at the 95 Lawrence project of 46 units, and the cost to do that is roughly about 450,000. Was at 450,000 at the time of the bid. We all know that materials have increased dramatically over the last couple of years, so the cost may now be upwards of 500,000. And that actually is a statewide figure. 450 to 500,000 is the cost to create one unit of housing. We have looked at getting a bid to rehab the cottages and cabins that are there. So the one thought would be at some point is to rehab the existing structures at a lower cost than the 450 to 500,000 and make them into year-round homes.
Okay, so when are you going to get this information out to the public? So, because September is right around the corner.
I don't think this is anticipated. I'll defer to Rich on this, but I don't know that this is part of the presentation, Rich.
No, it doesn't seem to be, but don't you
You're
think the
right, Gary.
taxpayers need to know?
It's not part of the presentation for the town meeting. I think the idea is, should the town acquire this, then we would immediately go into phase 2 of the development of the site and pretty much start working on what does the town envision for the site? What do we want to see? What kind of housing do we want to see at this location, and pretty much start that process. But we don't have that answer of what that development will look like at this point.
We do have a blueprint to answer your question. The town, Eastham is now, in the process of reimagining what they can do with the tea time property.
Okay,
They have a committee that they formed, been working on it for a year to go into both what we need for affordable housing, what we need for the community, what we need for commerce.
okay. So you do have something you could give us taxpayers so that at least we're not, doing it after the vote is kind of, I don't know.
Yeah,
That's not, to me, that's sneaky. Not that you're doing anything sneaky. I know you're under the gun here. And like I said, you've got a lot of good statistics here, but you want to try to sell this to the public. You need to give us a little bit more information.
So let me, Stephen, can I jump in? I
Sure.
totally agree with that. And I see both Harry and Fred's hands up. And that's why it's, just to get to this point is where, at this point, it is just the purchase, because there's going to be a lot of other expenses as design and everything else that goes along with it. I mean, I know septic has been a big issue, and I'm just going to throw this in real quick that either we pay for the septic now or later. So, that regarding the variance, I mean, there's got to be contingency plans for that as well. So this 6.5 is just only the purchase without even putting a shovel in the ground and without having any water. So I'm going to ask Fred, he's had his hand up for a while, and I'll get to you right after, Harry. Thank you.
I'd be happy to cede my place in line to Harry, because I have a feeling you probably had something to say relative to the conversation that just happened.
Okay, Harry, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, typically the model for constructing affordable housing like this is the model that's being used at 95 Lawrence Road. And basically, the town's contribution to that project is the land. The developer's pro forma only asked for an additional $500,000 from the town as a contribution. So all of the construction cost outside of that would be borne by the developer, and in exchange, the developer would collect the leases. So admittedly, the developer could come back and say, well, economic times have changed. We need more than $500,000. We'll have to deal with that. But basically, the single largest contribution to constructing housing on this will be contributing the land. The septic treatment plant, the 95 Lawrence Road, the developer has agreed to pay their share of the cost of that plant. So that's included in their numbers, not the town's numbers. We will pay part of it because it's going to service the school, the fire station, the police station, and potentially some surrounding homes. But the model is basically that the developer provides the funds, does the construction, and captures the leases. Our contribution typically is primarily the land. just to note, this parcel is 20 acres, not 30 acres.
Yep.
And another note, I went back and looked at the actual reservation sheets for the campsites. And just to pick one at random, the 2022 season rate was $4,400. There was a $160 winter rental fee. So the total campground rental was $4,560 for that site. But it also included $144 in taxes added onto that. So they do collect a tax as part of the rental stream. So with that, I'm going to stop again.
Okay, no, thank you. So they just didn't show it coming in or going out. So I just wanted to make sure that that was, okay. Thanks, Harry. I appreciate that. Fred?
Well, again, I don't want to break up the back and forth. It looks like there might be a comment relative to this conversation. So I'm happy again to cede my place in line here for a moment.
Okay.
I
Gary?
can just add what Harry said. The reality is that the public funding of affordable housing, like 95 Lawrence, is largely done by tax incentives that the state and the federal government provide. So of the $20+ million that goes into the cost of developing 95 Lawrence, the great majority of that is funded through tax credits. And we would anticipate the same kind of arrangement for housing at Maurice's. I also just wanted to add one other footnote. Someone raised, I think Harry just mentioned, campgrounds, as I understand it, are not subject to room tax, but they are subject to sales tax. So that's what you may be seeing.
Okay. Well, they have the mix of the cottages in there, but that would be.
Yeah,
it.
exactly right.
Okay,
Right.
Yep.
Do you want to, we also have some leeway. I want to raise an issue that Rich Waldo has floated out. We got an appraisal of $645,000 for the 3 acres, which would be the cap on the CPA contribution. I think you have received that information.
Yes.
Yeah, it's in that,
Okay, so
draft.
two things with regard to that. The $645,000, as the article indicates in the warrant, there's $186,000 in dollars that we have in hand that we could apply to that 186, which would effectively reduce the purchase price. And Rich has raised the issue, Rich Waldo, that the appraisal takes into account certain charges which may not apply to the town. So we could effectively increase the amount of CPA dollars that we could apply to it up to approximately $825,000, which would make the contribution after the direct 186 of approximately $638,000 worth of CPA dollars going forward.
Thank you. Anybody have any other questions? Fred?
Not so much, I guess, a question is just a comment. I'm try to be
A
brief.
caveat?
No, not a caveat, but it could be, I guess. We got involved as a finance committee about 2.5 months ago, as you know. And when we saw the original P&L, we kind of broke our questions up into 3 stages, all of which have been covered in the last 15 minutes to some degree. The first stage was the P&L was short on detail. And we had questions about a number of things that have materialized in this spreadsheet. So I think, thank you to Farouk and Nancy for all the work you've done to add detail to where there was none 2 months ago. And those questions were largely around, to a point that was made just a few minutes ago, is this a viable business? Does it spin off more money than it takes in? I mean, than it costs. And so that question has been answered to whatever degree it's been answered tonight, right? When we believe there's more money available to pay a developer, I mean, well, not a developer, a manager or the town, then it costs to run it. but it's a fungible number. The second set of questions had to do with the stuff that Stephen was just talking about in terms of the longer term goals and the management and how it would be managed and the septic and so on. That my understanding is that has been anyway, that those questions were going to get resolved after the vote in September, after it's been put to the town. And that is it's a dicey thing to do in some ways, because asking people to kind of follow you into the, unknown, when those unknowns have big costs associated with them is not a small ask.
Well, Fred, if I could comment on that, I think both Gary and Harry pointed out some good points about that.
Yes.
And if it could be reflected in this operations and financial review, not some extensive thing, but, long-term costs, blah, 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 so that the general public could take a look at this and say, yes, this is a good deal.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And the third thing I wanted to say was relative to the third thing we were talking about, the longer term goal. When we met with John Gothier about a month ago, and I called him the other day just to confirm that the number was right, he said that there are currently about 45 seasonal workers attached to restaurants and local businesses who use the campgrounds every year. That is, the restaurants use the campgrounds to staff their seasonal workers. And if this were not under the town's control in some way, I'm not saying that this is the nail that seals the deal, but if it weren't, I think you could assume that a private developer probably would price that opportunity less favorably to the local businesses. But it's not a small thing to X number of 7, 8 restaurants and other businesses locally to have the ability to put that there. And in the longer term strategy for building out what affordable housing looks like in this town, I will say just for myself, and I think it ought to be probably a given, that part of the plan can't just be about workforce housing. It has to accommodate some notion that we have seasonal workers, not tourists, but seasonal workers who rely on this, that the businesses do. And the quality of Wellfleet life is largely dependent on those businesses being open in the summer. That's all I'd say.
Thanks, Fred. Anybody else have any questions or any questions for any of our guests or, Mo?
I
Kathy,
do.
Yep.
I do it. Yeah, thank you.
Who was first, Rich or Mo? Who wants to go
Mo
first?
was and then Rich.
Okay, go ahead, Mo.
Just from the conversation, I'm assuming that the septic issue and not having to do anything about it in those first 6 years has been resolved, because it would change the picture a great deal if we had to tackle that up front. Has that been resolved?
There's a Board of Health meeting on the 24th for that, where they will be discussing the variance, I believe. And you should have something before town meeting. That's my understanding.
So, but we don't know that now.
We don't know that now. So if the purchase comes through and that variance isn't agreed, then the financing is going to look different, but we should have a better idea
Very
before
different.
the 10th. Yep.
I don't even know how it would work.
Yeah, we're only voting. I mean, right now the vote is very, very limited. And the scope basically is basically the article we're voting on is to spend 6.5 million to purchase the property. The rest of the expenses have not been hashed out yet.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Well, let's just be devil's advocate here. What happens if I'm sorry, somebody else was after me. Sorry.
No, let me get to Rich.
Yeah.
Rich?
I was just going to piggyback on what Kathy just said. The plan is to go before the Board of Health and request a variance to continue the operation of the campground with the existing cesspools. No change to the operation at all. Basically, the understanding is that, we consider this to be a special circumstance that is allowed under Mass General Code, that under certain special circumstances, transaction in real estate can occur with the understanding of variances are issued for cesspools to continue in operation. So we will be going before the Board of Health on the 24th to request that, so we can have some sort of answer when we go to town meeting. But I'd also like to note that within the purchase and sale agreement, that there is a caveat that basically, if the town is not given a waiver to operate the campground, we can go back and negotiate with the owners new terms of the agreement. You know, if we can't operate the campground, then we can't operate the campground. So, you know, there are some other avenues we can take. It is our hope that the Board of Health will see the benefit, that the long-term benefit is that, you know, this land will be developed. There'll be, you know, a comprehensive sewer treatment facility associated with that site. There's a good chance that we're going to have potable town water from the East Ham that will serve that site in the future. And if the town didn't purchase it, there's high likelihood that the campground would stay in operation for another 6 years or be developed with additional housings that will have basically traditional septic systems. So we'll know on the 24th, you know, how we're going to deal with that septic issue, but just so you know, there is a path forward on that.
Thank you.
Harry
Kathy, Harry has his hand up and then Jeff.
and Jeff.
Yeah,
Yep.
just very
Thanks,
quickly, Rich is correct. The purchase and sale agreement does not obligate us to complete the sale if we can't get the septic waiver. So if that comes apart on the 24th, we have the ability to either renegotiate the deal with the sellers or withdraw from it entirely. So we can't, you know, we're not on a road where we can be forced against our will to upgrade that septic system to keep running the campground. So we have the ability to react to that in some way, including walking away from the deal, which frankly I'd hate to see, but it certainly is in the agreement.
Thank you, Harry. Jeff? Jeff, unmute.
Well, while we're waiting for Jeff,
Oh, I'm
Fred,
back.
there was your word caveat.
Okay, what I wanted to ask was, you know, what Harry had said was that at the 95 Lawrence Road, which is fairly recent, what the town did was we essentially voted to donate the land to that project. And so what I'm trying to figure out is, looking into the future, if we're essentially investing now to buy the land, and then we are going to transfer that in the same way, to be able to help understand, I guess the part that's been so confusing is just trying to get a sense of what we can expect 6 years from now and what the town will be offering and what was different between that and say 95 Lawrence. Is that, I don't know if you can answer that, Harry, but.
I'm not sure I can, but it's also not clear to me that the entire 20 acres will be required for housing. That remains to be determined. We're proposing to build 47 units on about 6 acres on at 95 Lawrence. We could meet our 10% affordable housing goal with less than 20 acres, I'm guessing. But that's got to be planned out. And, you know, frankly, the town's contribution of the land, typically it will be a 99-year lease, but the land is the town's principal contribution to the construction of that project. The rest, the developer gets rents, and the developer gets state and federal tax credits, and that's what goes into the mix for funding the construction.
So Gary, I see your hand up, but I just want to ask one more quick question while Harry's got his stream of thought going there. And I kind of promised myself I wouldn't do this, so I'm sorry. But giving this over to a developer, far down the road, giving this over to a developer, is there a way that Wellfleet can, if this is purchased and we are now in the development stages, is there a way that Wellfleet can maintain the property, the entire units or the majority of units for the residents of Wellfleet? Because I think one of the big issues that I hear is that You know, we develop the land and then people come in from out of town, and I don't mean out of towners, but we have enough people in here that we have enough people in Wellfleet, our neighbors, that need assistance. So what I would like to see, whether you consider it a statement or a question, would be that if we are investing this money, that there be a way to do it so that we can help our neighbors.
I can actually address both.
Excellent.
So
Jump right in, Gary.
let me take the land use, and Harry's exactly right. If you look at both 95 Lawrence and the project that's now going forward at Truro and the project that was recently completed in Eastham, I believe that all three of them, the land was contributed by the town, but it was not given over in its entirety. Control of it was not given over. So it's on a 99-year lease, and it's a fairly complex, what's called a land disposition agreement, that talks about what the developer can and can't do on that land. So the town still has a lot of protections and controls over the land. Let me talk to you about what's called local preference. There are very strict laws regarding how we can rent out property that is being developed with public monies. And the basic guideline is that we, the town, request that up to 70% of the initial let out of the homes have a local preference criteria. But it's only on the initial rental of the property or sale of the property, as the case may be. And it's only up to 70%, and the state decides that based upon various market studies. So I hear the concern, but we are really governed by state and federal regulations on fair market housing on that. And we do generally try to get as much as we can for local preference, but it's only for the initial period.
Well, thank you for that explanation. Anybody have any other questions, or because we're going to move on?
Well, I just have a curiosity question. If we don't meet the 10%, what kind of punishment does a town get?
It's actually the other way. It's a carrot, not a stick. Stephen.
So if you don't reach the 10%, what do we get hit with?
Let me just give you the broad answer is, there are various rules and governance that apply if you are under the 10%.
And how would that affect the town?
Well, if you're above the 10%, the big one is what's called Section 40B of the regulations. So you are exempt from the requirements of 40B. And 40B is the process by which the 95 Lawrence permit at the ZBA is now being done because the town is not at 10%. So if we were in fact ever over that 10%, we would be exempt from a lot of those limitations.
So we need the 40B to put in the Lawrence Hill affordable housing, right?
Correct.
Okay, but if somebody else wants to develop something to sell off to private residents, there's no 40B thing that would factor into it, right?
I'm not a lawyer, so I may defer to Harry on this.
Okay, my understanding is that if we are making steady progress toward our 10% affordable housing, or if we have achieved it, we do not have to accept so-called unfriendly 40B projects. In other words, a developer cannot force us into a 40B project we don't want to see. And that means that as long as we're progressing, and we are, we only need to accept so-called friendly 40B projects. For example, 95 Lawrence Road is one where we issued a detailed request for proposals. We got a proposal from a developer which we found acceptable, and we invited them to submit a 40B application for a local comprehensive permit. And that waives And that's a way to get all the relief you need from zoning and public health and everything to do a project in one filing. So the answer is, if we don't meet our 10% housing goal, we are, number one, exposed to so-called unfriendly 40Bs, which may be projects we do not like. And number two, the middle age group in this community is disappearing. We've lost, I think, about 2/3 of the people that are in the 25 to 45-year age group in the last 3 or 4 decades. We built an elementary school for 220 people.
So
about-
Harry, I'm more interested in what the
Yeah.
actual cost of the town is going to be. And also, when do we have to get to that 10%? What's the deadline?
Well, the deadline's now, but you do get some protection against these so-called unfriendly developments.
Right, yep.
As
you
long
just
as
said
you
that.
make, as long as you make progress.
As
But
long as
that's a
you're making
goal
the
that's,
effort to
Hey,
strive
excuse
towards
me,
the
there's a
10%.
point of order. Kathy, this is a crosstalk. This is not
yeah,
helping
okay,
anybody.
Yeah, no, I'm finished. I don't have anything else to ask or say.
I'm going to stop. Thank you.
You're muted, Kathy. Kathy, you're muted.
I'm sorry, you couldn't hear me. Thanks, Stephen. I appreciate it, Harry. Fred, if you have something new, and then if nobody else has anything new, this is why I wanted to kind of confine it to and I know we need to have a broader understanding of the bigger pictures as we move down the road. So Fred, if you have something, and then I want to move on to, if nobody has anything else new, I want to start moving on with the rest of the agenda so we can all have a little bit of our night back. So Fred, go ahead.
Yeah, we invited Jay Norton to come because the DPW developed a 6-year capital projection. I'd love to hear a couple of minutes anyway of what their projection is and why, what went into the process in looking at the campground and the manageability of it. Since
He's here. Okay. Yeah, did everybody see that the capital spreadsheet with the roofs and everything that needed to be done? Jay, do you want to comment quickly? And then I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, sure. No problem. How's everybody doing? So I'll be brief because we've been talking about this for a while. I know you guys have other items on your agenda. So basically, just in a nutshell, I was in charge of, developing a due diligence team to really assess the structures of the property, the grounds and the utilities. So what we did is we developed a report, and working with the various team members, the building inspector, electrical inspector, Roland Blair was one of the team members, John Wolf, and Richard Robichaud, and Pete Williams. And if I'm missing someone, I'm sorry. But so basically what we did is we developed a report, and from that report, I assessed the criteria that the building inspector put down for the structures. I reviewed the material from John Wolf that reviewed the utilities, and we also looked at the grounds and anything, roadways and stuff like that. So basically, what you see in front of you, and unfortunately we had limited time to really get this out. So we didn't have any chance to really do some outreach to contractors to get pricing or anything like that. So really these numbers were developed based on my experience, just being a DPW director and having a capital budget for the facilities in town, and just looking at the market now. So how I developed this is I've split it up into 3 categories. So you'll see structures, which is A. You'll see B, which is utilities, and C, which is yearly grounds and services. I put an asterisk on that one because that really will be borne by the developer if the town does hire a developer to oversee this project. So those costs I didn't include in the year 1 assessment. But what I did do is, let's see, so we'll go through the structures component. So basically what you'll see is the majority of the structures need basic, roof replacement or windows and doors, of things of that nature. So you'll see a year one total there with the 30% contingency, just for escalation or, not knowing, exactly how these repairs are going to come out. So just kind of a blanket for the town, a safety blanket. The utilities component, which is B, it includes boilers, water heaters, water system, circulating pumps, electrical systems, septic systems. Didn't put a price on that up because we honestly don't know what's going to happen. We're hoping we get the variance on the 24th as Rich described. So there's no line item there. And then you'll see the yearly grounds and services. And what I've noticed from Nancy and Farouk's great presentation is we might have to meld some of the numbers together, make sure they connect. So we're issuing data that's accurate across the board. Let's see. So in a nutshell, the total for year one that I came up with is $307,266.05. And that includes the 30% contingency. And you'll notice that in years 4, 5, and 6 for the structures component, I didn't put anything there because I tried to mix year one and year two and spread it out a little bit. And if we do those upgrades, they're going to be good for the remainder of the time that we need to run the campground. So that was kind of my assumption there.
Thanks. Thanks, Jay. I think we nobody had any questions on that. I really enjoyed that report. I thought it was really thorough. I thought you took a lot of time to look through and make some accurate assessments. So I appreciate that. Anybody have any questions for Jay?
Thank you, Kathy.
No, just very well done.
Excellent. Thank you. So if no one is opposed, I believe we'll move past on to transfer to town update and then to the warrant really quick to run through. We don't have a lot of articles on the warrant, thankfully, so we should be able to get through this tonight, and then we'll talk about some housekeeping and administrative things. Anybody opposed to that? Any last questions? Excellent. Farouk and Nancy, thank you so much. Jay, thank you. I appreciate Harry and Gary being here to answer our questions. I'm sure there'll be more.
Harry has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Harry?
I was just going to say thank you for paying attention to this. It's an important question and we appreciate your scrutiny. Thank you. And good evening.
Thank you. All right, on to, let's see, I'm going to toss it to Rich. Rich, do we have any town transfers or anything that you need us to do for you last minute, looking forward to the town meeting?
We don't. Fortunately, if you look at the warrant, there is no budget transfers. You guys dealt with a host of them, I think about a month or so ago. You dealt with a bunch of budget transfers at that time. At this point, we don't need any transfers. We plan on addressing some in the spring. I think the two that will most likely happen in the spring is probably a legal to cover the legal budget, a transfer. One thing we had noticed from the end of last year was we had to transfer I think it was 138,000 into the legal budget at the end of the fiscal year 2022. And we basically observed that the legal budget was flatlined from the previous year. So we have some expectations there. We are monitoring it as we go, but as of right now, there is no budgetary transfers.
You're muted, Kathy.
Fred, before I get to you, Rich, can you give us, and this is going to segue into the warrant, can you give us an update on free cash? Because I believe some of the articles we're looking at tonight are going to come from free cash. So I want to just get an update on free cash, timeline on that, and answer the question, which I believe you did for me on the phone, but for the group, should we be voting on articles that are funded by free cash this evening?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I think you probably just asked Fred's question as
I
well.
did. He took his hand down.
Last week, I had the, privilege to meet DOR. They actually set up a meeting. Actually, I set up a meeting with them because I wanted to talk about how we operate the campground operation, how best to fund it into our budget, whether it's best to do a revolving fund, enterprise fund. But lo and behold, we set up a meeting. I thought it was going to be a virtual meeting, but then I had 5 people from DOR show up in my office, with one person that was attending virtually. So it was a little miscommunication there. But I will say my conversation with DOR really put my ease at rest. I was really anxious talking with them, what the process, really what, Wellfleet situation is. And DOR really gave a lot of comfort to say, hey, one, this happens all the time. There's 351 communities in the Commonwealth that at one point or another, they go through these financial straits, and then DOR comes in, helps straighten things up, and then they're on their merry way. With that, I basically discussed our path forward and to see if we're going to have free cash certified for our September 10th meeting. Where we stand right now is all the fiscal year 20 corrections. So this was the bad year. This was the problematic year for the town of Wellfleet. All the corrections have been made and have been sent to the auditors for their review. And it will be up to the auditors whether they're going to restate their financial audit or not. That is up to them. That really has no bearing with us. It's just, it's going to be up to them whether they want to. But the real gist of it is we need them to accept those corrections so they can move those numbers into fiscal year 21 so they can begin the fiscal year 21 audit. Right now, they have all the balance sheets, all the financial documents for fiscal year 21, and we expect them within the next week or two be able to finish the fiscal year 21 audit. Once they're complete, we have the audit from them. We're going to take the fiscal year 2021 audit, and we're going to submit it to DOR, as well as with the fiscal year 22 balance sheets that we have already pretty much completed and balanced. We'll send that all to DOR. It was our hope that they would be able to do a quick turnaround and be able to certify free cash within 2 weeks. In that conversation that I had with them, they had advised me that they're going into their tax rate setting season. This is when they go through the 351 communities and they help them set their tax rate. And basically that takes precedence over certifying free cash. They had given me an indication that it could take up to 4 weeks, maybe even 5 weeks for them to certify our free cash. I asked them if it would be advisable for us to leave free cash items on the warrant, and they said yes, leave it on there just in case for some reason we're able to get through all that documentation, certify free cash before September 10th. And so that's what we did. We really trimmed it down quite a bit on all the requests to the absolutely necessary ones. And then we left them in the warrant, just in case free cash is certified. So in terms of the finance committee, it would be my suggestion that you guys still vote on these free cash or these articles that pertain to free cash, just in case DOR does come through, they certify free cash, we have a surplus or whatever amount that is, and then we can replenish our stabilization fund. We can fund some of these important capital projects. And when we go through the warrant, we'll document which ones are going to go through free cash. So that's it in a nutshell. I will say again, I really feel thankful talking with DOR. They're going to pretty much be issuing a financial management review report that they did for the town. They did give me a a couple of recommendations that they had. One of them is a human resource director, which will be discussed when we go through the warrant. But we should be expecting their review report by the end of this month at some point.
Oh, thank you. All right, anybody, any questions? Everybody ready to get to the warrant? Let's whip through this.
Am I
Yeah,
the only one who doesn't have a copy of the warrant? Where did you get it?
in the email that was sent to you.
Oops.
Fred, can you grab that and,
I
hang on.
can, I could share the screen as well.
Yeah, please.
You want to
I would
share?
appreciate that too.
Okay, that would be great. And if I can't see your hands up, then it's just me. So, I apologize for that if you didn't get it.
All right.
So Article 1, while Rich is starting to share, is just prior year invoices. So I don't think that this is going to be a big, heavy lift. Prior year invoices that we have to pay if we vote no. I don't know what happens because that's never happened before. So Article 1 is prior year invoices. Anybody?
I'll
anyone?
move Article 1.
Thank you. For anybody second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? No, hearing none, unanimously passes Article 1. We're whipping for this.
And Kathy, I believe there are 8 of us online now, so
Oh, okay, thank you.
actually
So
there may be 9, actually,
we
because
have
Jeff
nine.
Behrens is here as well.
Yep, okay. 9-0 on Article 1. All right, guys. Capital budget, these are the articles that we are,
Yeah, so I could go over these if you'd like. Kathy, if you're okay with
yeah,
that?
go ahead. Yep, jump in, Rich.
So basically, this article has been structured in such a way that if free cash is not certified, we can make a motion to indefinitely postpone Article 2A, which is capital budget out of free cash, and then Article 2B, which is capital budget out of other receipts, other funds. So we structured those a little different. Under 2A, all these are carryover articles from the Springtown meeting that we weren't able to fund from free cash. We actually whittled it down a little bit to the priority ones. You have the bulletproof vest for the police department. You have the water refilling station, as well as the Briar Lane culvert. Those are free.
Excuse me, Rich, 1 second. On my screen, on my Zoom screen, I'm not seeing the warrant at all. I'm seeing
Yeah,
like,
you got the minutes up, Rich.
I'm seeing a list of like minutes and.
You got the agenda
You
up.
got the agenda up. I'm sorry.
Let me try resharing because I did move it. How about now?
Better.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Synopsis, you guys got the idea of Article 2A, 2B being broken down. So Article 2A, that will be funded from free cash. You have the police department bulletproof vest, you get the water refilling station and Briar Lane culvert. We felt that those were the critical projects. If there was a way that we could fund them, we wanted to move forward with them. They were with free cash. Under Article 2B, the fire department originally had fire hose replacement in here. They've been having a lot of problems with their current pickup truck that they have. And that the pickup truck was scheduled for replacement in the spring of 2024. But because of the difficulties that they're having with the truck now, they've asked if they can move that up into this special town meeting to get a jump on it, considering that it's going to take 12 to 18 months to actually fulfill this order. So they had actually moved this up. We put it under ambulance receipt and we took the fire hose request out, which was for about $15,000. Another one that had been discussed is the Golpond and Long Pond stair improvement. These are 2 access ways down to the beach. That they've been basically something that's has been disintegrating over time. And there was a request previously to put this on the annual town meeting in June 2022. It got postponed. And they're asking to see if we can actually fund it now, just because of the amount of complaints that we're getting from the public this summer. And that would be fully funded from the beach fund at $25,000. So that is pretty much a whittled down capital budget right there.
Anyone have any questions?
No. I'm going to move that we approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Wake up, Fred.
Way to go. Fred was not opposed.
I said aye.
Article 3, transfer to the stabilization fund. Go ahead, Rich.
Article 3, this is a
We all know
carryover.
what this is. I think we all know.
Yeah,
what
this is a carryover from the June 22 meeting. We're hoping to refund the stabilization fund that was used to balance the budget, the fiscal year 23 budget. It was our hope in June that we'd have free cash certified. It was our hope in September we would. The number has not changed. It's the same amount, 639,200. This would be one of those articles that would be indefinitely postponed if we do not have free cash certified.
I'm gonna move that we approve this article.
Second,
All righty, rolling right through them. Thank you. Article number 4, Human Resources Director. This is a new staff position.
Kathy, we didn't take a vote on Article
I
3
think we
yet.
have to vote on
Oh,
that.
I'm
Kathy.
sorry. Did we not vote? I'm sorry, everybody.
It's okay.
I just assumed. You know what happens when you assume. All in favor of Article 3?
Aye.
Aye.
aye,
Any opposed? Excellent, because I had already written that down in ink. All right, Article 4, a new position for Human Resource Director, new staff position.
Article 4, this is a position that was discussed before my presence here in Wellfleet, but I will reconfirm that this is a position that would greatly improve the operation of the town of Wellfleet. The auditors in their previous audit and their management letters had basically suggested the hiring of a human resource director. My discussion with DOR, part of their management review, is to recommend the hiring of a human resource director's position. And basically what ends up happening now, the current operation, is the duties of HR are divvied between your assistant town administrator, your town treasurer, your town accountant, and your assistant town treasurer. And when you go through the seasons, if you look down to the particular number, there's 100 seasonal employees. The onboarding that takes place from, say, March to June is extremely time consuming, getting all these new employees on, getting them new registered, getting new benefits for certain individuals. And basically, it just drains your finance department. That takes them away from other duties such as balancing cash books, journal entries, things like that. On the administrator end, the way that the town is structured is that every non-union person has a contract. So every 3 years, a new contract has to be written for every non-union employee. It's extremely time consuming, dealing with personnel issues, enforcing personnel rules and regulations, extremely time consuming, takes away from our ATA's ability to focus on more of the planning projects, the local comprehensive plan, a lot of these things that move a town forward. So based on those, recommendations, and you'll see in my summary down here, some of the duties that an HR director would perform. This is one of our largest expenses in our budgets. The benefit time of vacation time and sick time being mismanaged has a real impact to our budget and has the potential to surprise us for things that aren't properly managed. So this request is for $115,000 to fund this position. It would be our goal as soon as town meeting to go out. We have a job description prepared, get it out, get it advertised, try to get this filled before we enter into collective bargaining with the 5 unions sometime later this fall. We'd love to have them on board so we can streamline some of these contracts and the disconnect from the union contracts, from the personnel rules, and really just kind of fix things and have them align better.
So, Rich, Kathy, if I may ask a question.
Absolutely, Ira.
Is this exclusive of, we spend a lot of time talking about police and fire overtime, have for decades. Is the human resources director exclusive of the police and fire department, or do they work together?
They would be, part of helping and assisting, and as well as, helping the town administrator and overseeing the police and fire operation.
But it wouldn't be, but it wouldn't be exclusive to those departments. It would be a townwide.
It would be townwide, all town
Ira.
employees.
It would be
I know,
all
I
town.
just thought that the police and fire the police chief and the fire chief would certainly want to handle their own department quite apart from a human resources director.
And they would, from the most part, the human resource director would be able to sit in with, say, grievances, disciplinary things, to advise the police chief or the fire chief of legal stature, requirements of best practices and moving forward on how to carry out, say, progressive discipline, how to change past practices that are really hurting the town. They would be there as a support.
So they'd be advisory for them, and then for the non-union employees, also a director towards the non-union employees, right? So it's for all employees, basically. It's just unions you can't have too much of an input on, but then you've got the non-union town employees. And how many of them are there?
It's 116 full-time and over 100 seasonal employees.
Okay, and they're non-union, right? They're not covered by the employees union.
They're a mix of union and non-union employees that would be, would have access to the human resource director. The human resource would help on recruitment, would help the fire department, the police department try to get recruitment, as well as town administration.
Yeah, okay, it's just making it a little more professional, basically.
Exactly.
Fred, go ahead.
Rich, one of the questions that comes up whenever there's this kind of staffing request is whether the 115,000 incorporates the total cost of the employee in terms of administration and infrastructure, office space, benefits, all of that. Is this a salary 115,000, or is it salary and benefits? And do you envision that I'm almost certain there'd have to be an admin of some kind to this person just to do the dotting of I's and stuff. So
this is the 115,000 reflects salary and benefits.
Okay.
Basically all the benefits associated with a position with the town of Wellfleet. The structure to get an admin, the idea is to, right now, we have a vacancy within the administration for a principal clerk position. And we're currently going through the process to rework that job description to include the title of assistant human resource. So basically would add the assistants to the HR director. And not only that, fill in for during the absence of the human resource director. I think one of the things that these communities, particularly on the Outer Cape, need to really think of succession planning, people leaving, how do we fulfill those roles, and to have people cross-train, dual train, that's the idea here. So we'll reclassify one position as assistant HR as well as principal clerk, and then you'll have your HR director here.
Okay.
Is this a union position, Rich?
Currently, right now, the principal clerk is in the union.
And what about the human resources director?
This would not be in the union. I'm trying to get the principal clerk position removed from the union and change the job description so we have that assistant end with it.
What other towns are using a human resource director?
Probably easier to say what towns don't. I think Perot does not. I think that's one of the others, but they have, a dedicated town planner. They have a dedicated finance director. So it's really that avenue that works for their town. I know Provincetown has a human resource. I believe Eastham, I believe Orleans, and all the way down the Cape has a human resource director. Given the complexity of, the benefits, the health, track.
Whoops.
Rich, you froze.
Somebody's. Am I the only one who can't hear him?
No,
I think Rich is
Rich
frozen.
got dropped.
Oh, here he is.
There
Rich,
you
you
are.
back. You back?
I think he's coming back.
How many more articles are there?
There's 20 in total. We're in
Okay.
Article 4, but not all of them pertain to
Finance, okay.
Finance. Okay.
My question, I guess, two parts. One is, who's doing this today? Is that the responsibility of the town administrator? And second is, are there any service companies that offer like a virtual HR as opposed to us having to add a person to do this.
Again, who's doing that job today is a mix of four people. It's your assistant town administrator, your treasurer, your accountant, and your assistant treasurer collector. They're handling most of the employee benefit, the onboarding, all the health insurance stuff, tracking all of the benefit times. That's the current system. Is there? Sure. I mean, is there ability to maybe hire a contracted employee to fill this position? Yes, it probably is. Would the savings be a lot? No. Would we be able to get that full benefit of having someone in place, meeting the town employees, sitting with them, having access to them all the time? Someone has a problem at home, someone needs employee assistant program, they need some help. Do they have access to an HR on a virtual platform or outside? Not as well. And that's kind of the cohesiveness that we're trying to build here. We're trying to say that this is a professional environment. You're going to come in here, you're going to have expectations, you're going to perform well. And if you don't perform, as expected, you're going to be disciplined. And that's the type of environment that we're trying to create here.
So, Rich, if I could jump in and just advocate for this, so you guys know that I'm not a big fan of new positions. However, going through the DOR, when Charlie came on board and meeting with the Department of Revenue, watching what Charlie did from a standpoint of not only debits and credits and excruciating journal entries, but trying to manage the HR from a position from the town. There had been laxes over the years in that we do not have a personnel manual. There has been no ongoing training expectations for people. And I think a lot of that started the decline because everybody was doing everything willy-nilly. The other thing is there is just a tremendous amount of litigation these days in hiring. And I think it's really important to standardize the way that we treat all of our employees in Wellfleet, set the proper expectations, onboard them in a professional manner. And as much as I am not a fan of new positions, I think this one will be well worth the cost in making up some of the numbers from the mismanagement through the years. And not intentional mismanagement, but just lack of a centralized place.
Focus.
Yep.
So wait just one second,
Oh,
Kathy, there is an employee manual because when I was on the personnel board, Liz Smith, Lois Rustia, me, Harry Turkanian created one, but nobody, it only applied to like 8 people at the time. So
I apologize, Stephen, because Charlie didn't know where that was in the office. So my apologies. To you.
Yeah. But that's a good, this is
So
a
I have
good
two
point
quick
because it has
questions.
to be
Yeah.
decentralized.
Two quick questions. Rich, is this position going to do personnel evaluations of town employees?
I think that the long-term goal, yes. I don't think they'll be in a position to do it within the first year or two. Hopefully the second year they will, but annually performance reviews is something that we would like to see this position do.
Okay, and my next question is, what can we expect, for instance, that the assistant town administrator would now be able to do if this was taken out of the job description of that position?
Well, it's going to take some time to transition, but more of that planning element that is associated with that position. There's a state requirement that each town update their local comprehensive plan every 5 years. We're well past 8 to 10 years on the local comprehensive plans. To be a little more inclusive in the planning and zoning board. I mean, she does a fantastic job right now, being stretched in, but those are the objectives there. Help with the development, not only at 95 Lawrence Road, help with the planning effort associated with Maury's Campground, should that move forward. There was a couple of other developments that had come up tonight. I'm losing track of the projects, but it's projects like that. It's tried to be that representation for the town.
I
If I-
understand she's a great grant writer as well, too. So wouldn't it be nice to have somebody paying attention to writing grants and maybe getting some money to fund some of this stuff? That would be fabulous.
And I would
If-
just like to point out that originally the assistant town manager's position was sold to the town as a planning position. So
So
it's kind
if
of
I-
morphed into something else.
If I could piggyback on the two questions Woody just asked, on the one hand, one of the things that was missing in the 2 years of pain we just came out of was the ability to evaluate poor performance and off-board people who were not stepping up with the appropriate skill set to get things done. There was no organized process for doing that. So I think dovetailing a little bit with what Kathy said, having some sort of HR function and a person or a role at the top of that to do evaluations and to standardize performance would be a good thing. And also Rebecca Ruffley, the assistant town administrator, her background is in planning. And in my time as the chair of the committee, the one thing that was woefully lacking, it seemed to me, from the most senior parts of Wellfleet's administration, I don't mean you, Rich, was an overall strategic planning function, which is looking forward and trying to put all the pieces together to coordinate the future of the town. And to your point, it's been probably 10 years since we had a comprehensive plan. I forgot his first name, Carlson, who left, was on the verge of doing it. And then it just fell on the floor and it never got picked up. And I think that would be great if Rebecca could, focus more of her time on helping you to see the big picture going forward.
I always find it beneficial to align people with their strong suits. And, we're fortunate enough to have an assistant town administrator that has that planning background that can pick up that ball and carry it pretty far.
We ready for a vote?
We're ready
Yeah.
for a vote?
Yep.
Okay. Somebody wanna
I'll make the
vote?
motion to,
Thank you, Jeff. Second,
Second,
everybody seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent, 9-0. Thanks, guys. Article 5, Wellfleet Harbor Flora and Fauna Survey. We have John Reel here, who I sent out a one-pager for him, and he is here to speak to his article. Anybody have any questions? John, go ahead, make your pitch. Oh, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Hello?
hi, Ira.
Can
Yeah,
anybody hear me?
We can't get John on there.
But by the way, if John can't get on for any reason, I believe we voted on this last year and approved it. And then it got pulled.
Okay, so I'd like to talk about this a bit, though, because it's also kind of something that I've been,
Yep, go ahead,
Go.
Steve.
I think the last time this came around, I made the recommendation that they seek a grant from SPAT.
Right.
So I would like to know if they did do that, because I took a look at their SPAT's tax returns. And in 2021, they had a credit, 2020, the last one. 2020, they had a credit balance, net asset, fund balance, $548,000. So to me, this kind of project would be kind of beneficial for them to support, because their whole festival is centered around the oyster and the health of the oyster. I don't think it's too much to ask if they could at least cough up $60,000 to pay for this study so that the taxpayers don't. We already give our town up, and this year it's going to be even longer. So I would recommend that we not recommend this and then ask the NRAB to go to SPAT.
Could we have John Reel talk first, though?
Yeah,
please?
I can't, he is very welcome to speak, but he can't get on for some reason.
I see him. He can't, he's
He can't
muted?
speak. He's not muted. He's muted and not muted. He's muted and off and on. I mean, I would appreciate having him speak as well. John, can you dial in? Do you have a phone that you can dial? While John's dialing in, oh, no, the next one's I was gonna say. you wanna
What's the
move on to
next one?
But the next one's the
Campground.
campground. So we will not, and I think the campground is it, pretty much, right?
There's 3 with the campground, and I think there's one at the end, which is the LeCounte Hollow parking lot.
Okay, so we're almost there.
Yeah.
You guys want to talk about something else really quick?
When are we gonna start to meet in person?
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Actually, I have a question for Rich Waldo while we're waiting for John about
Okay.
article, the operational costs of the campground, because that came up at a meeting of the task force a few weeks ago. And Rich had expressed a concern about the year 1 operations cost. Is this article intended to cover that concern, Rich?
It is. If you want to jump to Article 8, so basically this is the Maurice Campground operational cost. So when I met with DOR, the gist of meeting with them was to discuss how we actually fund this operation that we have. The idea was, an enterprise fund, a revolving fund, a stabilization fund, or the general fund. And we went through all the scenarios of possibilities. And at the end of the day, they basically narrowed it down and said, you got to run this through the general fund. And so with that in mind, we knew that we wouldn't have any access to any revenue that would come in from the campground, whether it be a lease or whether it be through rentals if we didn't have a campground operator. So the idea with this article is to fund that first year capital, that first year operation, as well as some capital as outlined by Jay Norton, part of his capital plan. This is really the skinny down version that really would fund the remainder of the fiscal year. So the idea is that we would close on the property on October 31st. So we need to cover the cost to run the operation from November 2022 to June 30th of 2023, the remainder of fiscal year 23. And that's what the article is so how do we fund, should we not have a campground operator? What's that minimum amount that we're going to need to fund that operation and be able to open up that campground next year to fulfill our obligation? And we had come up with the number of 225,000, and this comprises of 163,000 in operational cost, as well as 62,000 in capital cost. The thought had crossed our minds to be able to borrow or ban this money so we wouldn't have to do a Prop 2.5 to be able to fund that. When I reached out to bond counsel as well as our financial advisor, they told me that you cannot bond for operational expenses. So I could not bond for this. So we had to go with the Prop 2.5. And so that's why we kind of whittled it down to 225,000. As you can see, the actual operating cost to operate the campground for a fiscal year is 362,000. I think that was the number there. But we don't need a full year of operation. We only need a partial of operation. And then in the springtime, we would appropriate another operating, let me rephrase that. In the Springtown meeting, you'll have part of our operational costs. You'll have a separate division. You'll have police, fire, public works, and then you'll probably have a Maurice Campground operational cost. And we will fund the following fiscal year at that time. So what we need is that first fiscal year covered. The fact that this is a Prop 2.5 and the fact that 225,000 is going to be allocated in subsequent years after that. The idea is to take that money and to fund that capital expense in future years that was, outlined as part of the due diligence report by DPW Director Jay Norton. So the idea here is to get the money that we need to minimally fund should we not have an operator in place, and that we could still open come April next year, be able to pay the expenses of our insurance to operate the campground, the utilities that need to be operated through June 30th, to fund the employees through June 30th, and the minimal capital expenses to open up the facility. The main capital expense will be whittled down. We won't be targeting the roofs. We won't be targeting the windows. What we'll be targeting is the life and safety things, which is the electrical upgrades that will be required as part of an occupancy permit for the next year. So very difficult to explain, but I hope I got some traction there. Was able to.
The only add-on question I'd have is there enough money in the general fund to do this?
No, not for this fiscal year.
So we would have to get free cash certified and get the
Have to get-
stabilization fund refunded and all to be able to pay for this, even if it's
Exactly.
approved.
Exactly.
So
Ira,
if,
go ahead, Ira.
yeah, so I'm not understanding. So this is if we can't find an operator, so who will be the employees? Are these going to be DPW people? Are these going to be new hires that we hire specifically for Maurice's campground? And how many might there be? And doesn't it represent, because you're dealing with salaries and stuff in a market in which salaries are going up, it just seems to me that it's a little dicey here.
So there's two scenarios here. One, we go out and we advertise, and it's our goal to have a bid opening for an operator soon after closing, right at November 1st or right around there to have an operator. If for some reason we don't, and I will say that we have had interest for people that are interested in running the operation, both locally as well as regionally, some of the larger camping outfits. So we're confident that we will have one. However, we still have to plan as if we don't have an operator. And then the idea would be to piece together an operation team that would be able to run the campground. Probably hire the existing manager that's there now, try to retain some of the employees that are there now that currently work, and fill in any other positions that we can and keep that operation campground going. And we'd have that funding source to be able to pay those salaries, to pay that operational expense with this article.
Do they become town employees?
They would. I actually have to think about that.
So that would be.
Can't they be contractors?
Yeah, I think they would be contracted employees.
Yeah, this is just a safety net, right?
No, I know that. I know that.
Exactly. Now,
Okay, guys, go ahead.
Can I
Rich,
just
go ahead.
add one
I just
piece
wanted
of
to
the-
see if John was here so we could go back, because I think that's good.
just because we're on that topic,
Go
I
ahead.
just want to say
Go ahead.
the flip side is if we do have an operator in place, then they would be giving the town, estimated $200,000 to operate that campground. That would go right into the general fund, and we'd have this $225,000 available to us. We would earmark that entire 225 to capital expenses that were outlined per that capital plan. The DPW's capital plan was about 180,000, projection. It'll give us a little, buffer for any unknowns that we might have. So it'd be earmarked for capital.
Thanks, Ira. John, are you on the line? Can we discuss your article if you're here?
I can hear you. Can you now hear me?
We can hear
Yes.
you. Yes. So there was a question about, have you gone back to SPAT and seen if they were willing to contribute to this flora fauna study?
Let me put my answer in a context. Wellfleet Harbor is critical to the entire town, not only shell fishing, but fishing, visitors. There has not been a study of the harbor since 1970, and changes coming since then, including and more that are coming soon, such as climate change, the Herring River, the wastewater project. So I think we have compiled a project which I think should be owned by the whole town, not just the shell fishermen. And so that was our reason for putting it before the general public.
So my question, John, is did you ask SPAT if they had any grant money available?
We are sure that, no, we decided not to approach them. We decided we wanted to get the approval of the people, of the voters of the town of Wellfleet. I think one of the other differences between this sort of project as it's been carried out elsewhere and what we're doing is that we're concerned not only with the major, shall we say, critters or in the harbor, such as sport fish. We're also very much concerned with what they eat, such as small fish, and the small fish eat mosquitoes out of the harbor. Gives a much broader view of the health of the harbor than just looking at one narrow component.
Okay, so who's going to do this study?
We have just one final comment. We have support for the Conservation Commission and from the Shell Fishing Board and Department.
Do you have
I just
monetary
heard a
support
question.
from them?
Excuse me?
You have monetary support from them or just
No.
support saying
No.
yes?
No support for the project.
Okay. And who's going to do the study?
I have a list of 5 potential suppliers. We have to put out an RFP. We're working with the assistant town manager on that, and hope to get that out soon.
Okay, well, Ira, Mo's
I'm
got his
finished.
hand up. Mo's got
Okay,
his hand- Oh, I'm sorry. Mo had his hand up, Ira.
Okay, no problem.
Oh, thanks. Mo, you're muted, Mo. Mo, you're on mute.
Sorry. Do you feel that if SPAT paid for it, it would limit the study in a way that you wouldn't be happy with?
I think they would put
Well, let's not just suppose because you never asked them the question. So
well, we haven't asked the question, and I guess the fair answer is the one I have already given.
But I guess I'm asking if the reason that you declined to ask SPAT is because you thought it would impact the study in a way that you wouldn't be happy with.
We would have been concerned by that, yes.
Ira?
But
Thank
to
you.
be honest, we have not contacted them.
Okay, Ira? do you
I
have a-
understand.
Okay,
Sorry,
very,
Mo.
very quick question. This seems like an awful lot of work. Where'd you come up with the figure 75,000?
There
Good
was a
question.
similar study done at Pleasant Bay a few years ago. We started off with that number, and we added an increase because of general costs going up and some specific testing of phytoplankton, which are actually what shellfish eat. But there's some evidence that we're getting an influx of species from further south, and they may be a problem, and testing for that is more expensive.
Would it be possible to get a bid first and then come back to satisfy the actual cost that you get, the actual estimate that you get?
I suppose, Ira, we've been trapped by the free money issue. We wanted to get this underway, and it takes time to get somebody on board.
So, so John,
If-
I know that we had looked at this. I know this has come up, I think the last 2 years, and we looked back at it, and couldn't fund it for free cash, and we're kind of looking at ways to cut budgets. So over the last couple of years, with everything that's going on, it's been, I mean, I don't want you to feel like, you know, you're being nickeled and dimed after we just spent, you know, $1 bazillion in 4 minutes. But we've been trying to look for creative ways for other resources to share in financing for the town. And thought that SPAT might be a good place to go for that. So I don't know, Bob Wallace has a question. Go ahead, Bob.
Would this qualify for CPA money?
We're about to spend that in the next article, I think.
Not all of it. Well, obviously, I'm for it. I think I would recommend it after we discuss this for the next 20 minutes that I would vote or move that we vote for 50% paid by the town, 50% paid by SPAT. And then the voters can do whatever they want with it, but that would be the recommendation on the warrant. I'm done.
I don't see how we could vote.
Yeah, I
for
don't think we can
SPAT to
change
pay
it.
$37,000.
Why don't we, can we do this? Can we do this in the, can we vote?
Save it for
it?
before town meeting.
Yeah, do you want to wait? Because I'm going to hope to have another meeting before town meeting. Do you want to see if John can reach out to SPAT and then we can look for something prior? Because we can either do it.
Yes, I would support that.
Would you support reserving this to town meeting? Is that how I do it?
Sure.
Yes.
I'm
So
hoping we
moved.
can have another meeting before town meeting.
I am too, because I think there's a lot more stuff to go through. So
Yeah.
why don't we vote? So do I hear a motion to
Make a motion to
defer.
reserve this vote until town meeting.
town meeting?
Second.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. John, just go back and we're gonna have another meeting before town meeting and hopefully we can find some funding for you. So one way or another, but it would be great to see if SPAT wanted to share.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Thank you for your time. This is I think this is an important endeavor. We're just trying to, you know, do the best diligence we can with the money we have.
I do want to point out that Article 5 would be dependent on free cash certification. It would be postponed if it wasn't certified.
Until we got certified cash. So we're gonna, okay, excellent. So 5 is all set. John's gonna go back and we'll get updated on that. Article 6, acquisition of the campground. So this is the one that is $6.5 million that we are gonna vote to buy the campground. Further discussion, questions, issues? Anybody else want to hear anything else on it?
Am I the only one who thinks that it would be nice to sit and think about this for a while, or am I?
No,
Just-
you can we can, if you would like to defer this one as well, because there's a lot of material. I'm hoping, like I said, I'm hoping to have another meeting. If you want to defer, by then we'll actually have Board of Health septic results. So this may look.
So
nice
moved.
differently. Thanks, Stephen. So you got moved to defer this to town meeting,
To
Do I have
to
a
the next
second?
meeting,
to the next
mean-
meeting.
to
Yeah.
the next meeting. Okay,
Yep. Second? Anyone?
Second.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Do you want to
So
do
does-
it with the next, with 7 and 8 as well?
Aren't they of a
Um,
piece? Well, community preservation, we could vote on, I suppose.
Well,
Well,
not if-
wait, go up.
Not if,
What's? Go ahead.
So
Okay.
the only thing, I
Go ahead.
guess, if you guys are going to postpone, then I won't bother explaining, but I wanted to point out
Yeah.
one thing about this article.
okay, go ahead. No, explain, because then if we do this, if my plan doesn't work in the next 15 minutes, we'll be doing this right before town meeting. So it's best that we have the information now. Do you guys
Okay.
want to hear it and then postpone? it?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
While we're here, sure.
Let's hear
Yes.
it. All right.
So I just wanted to point out that, you see the appropriation sum of $1,050,000. That was our our estimate of appraised value of the 3-acre parcel of land. We used as a placeholder until we went out for an appraisal. We received the appraisal. The appraisal came back at $645,000. Gary Sorkin talked a little bit today about us trying to use what is called the market value. Well, what is actually called the gross sales proceeds. So when they do the appraisal, they give you a gross sales proceed of $625,000, but then they start deduction for contractor costs to develop that land, for road reconstruction, engineering, absorption period, things like that. And then they come up with basically an assessed value, which was $645,000. It's our goal to go and ask CPA whether we can use the higher amount of $825,000. At the end of the day, we're going to use whatever's the less amount, whatever the appraisal comes in at, or whatever the 1 million, the article specified at $1,050,000. So I just wanted to point that out there. You'll see some numbers when we get to the motion at town meeting floor. We'll have that final number, likely going to be less than $1,050,000, but CPC had allocated and approved up to $1,050,000 to be used for that restriction.
Okay, that's a really great explanation that it's up to. So that it makes kind of sense to reserve that because we should have a real number.
Okay, Kathy, can I ask sort of a procedural question here?
Sure, because, yeah.
Articles, I'm going to get my numbers right here. Articles 6, 7, and 8, obviously they're related and to some degree they're codependent.
Yep.
If you don't vote for the operating money, but you buy the property, you kind of screwed the town because they can't operate the property. There's no money to do it.
Yep.
If you vote against Article 7, but vote for 6 and 8, you're turning down $1 million in relatively free money. I see that they're 3 separate articles, but I just want to make the point that we ought to kind of think of them as a set here because they're not separate in the sense that they're unrelated to each other.
So here's the reason that I looked at them separately, Fred, is because you can vote to not buy the campground, but you can kind of vote to fund it just in case it gets passed. So I understand. I think we should move to postpone until our next meeting. All 3 of those articles.
I think that's a good idea, myself.
Yep. Second on that.
I will just point out that Article 6 and Article 8 are proposition overrides. Those will be a ballot question. Article 7 is not.
Right, because it's not, yeah, it's.
Seven's not because it's CPC funds.
It's not going to affect the tax rate, right?
Exactly. Article 7, you know, that's you know, pretty much independent. You know, if you vote on Article 6 and you don't vote on Article 7, we can still purchase the land. I did talk to town council about the you know, Article 6 and Article 8, and basically there's no right order to put them in, but you need to purchase it first before you can operate it, and that's how we kind of see the you know, procedure there.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Any do we have, what's our last article in here? Forgive me. One more at the end.
Is it 11? Is it 11?
I know this, it's 19. I'm just trying to think. Oh, Lisa Town Properties. This is
Right.
one. This is a telephone pole that is out at 1176 Groves Hill. This was a previous article that had come before the Finance Committee to you know, lease out this property. At the time, AT&T was interested. Yeah, AT&T was interested, but we really want to open it up to other bidders, you know, T-Mobile, Sprint, and see who actually is the highest qualifying bid. So,
So it's more revenue for the town.
Yeah, it has some financial implications.
Okay, so I'll move that we
Second.
approve Article 11.
Second.
11. Yeah.
11.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I just want to know why we aren't trying to go back and sell some of the top of the water tower.
With the water tower, exactly.
The water tower needs to be painted. Okay, anyway, so I think that we're gonna move on to the meeting 2023. Just a couple of housekeeping things, guys.
Rich,
So we're
think there's
done
one
with the
more
warrant?
article, excuse me. The other one's general bylaw, but then the last one, the implication, potential financial implication is
Night.
a non-binding advisory vote to change LeCount Hollow McGuire's Landing for taxpayers. So basically not make it a paid parking lot anymore. You'll see a little bit of a description below. I think it was the last 3 or 4 years. LeCount Hollow Beach has been reserved for beach
Citizens.
resident taxpayers, beach sticker holders, and wasn't available to the public. And basically the select board has requested to put this on for a non-binding vote to see if that's the direction that the town wants to go in the future, is make this permanently just available to taxpayers and taxpayer beach sticker holders.
Do we really need to vote on that?
I don't think we need to.
I
vote.
don't think so.
Again,
It's non-binding and it's not gonna have a financial impact on the town.
Well, it may, if it reduces revenue. I mean, if they're not paying, we're reducing revenues. They've already done it for 2 years.
Right now, citizens with a beach sticker who pay for a sticker can go there. It's just non-residents who can't go there, right?
I'd like to know how much we made in the past by charging people.
That would be a good thing to know.
So would,
Maybe
And how-
Suzanne could come in and talk about it at the next town meeting, at the next thing.
Why don't we
Maybe
just
I'll-
find out
Rich,
what the
what do you
revenue
think?
was
Rich, what are you
before?
thinking? Because Rich kind of harumphed there. I saw harumph. What do you think? Do you want us to weigh in or not? Or
I just looked at it as a financial implication of what kind of revenue was generated from that parking lot. I should have anticipated the question you asked at how much, last time it was open for residents, but I don't know if they can actually parse that out, because it's one of those ones, if you actually have a beach sticker, you can go to that
you
lot,
can go
unlike
in.
White Crest, which is you pay as you go. You go in there, you actually pay at the meter and stuff. So I can get that information for you if you want to hold it until next meeting. And then
yeah, we'll hold it. We'll hold on to that
Okay.
one. Are we paying a parking, so are we paying a parking attendant? Because I'll tell you.
Yes.
All right, are we? Yeah. So either way, we're going to pay a parking attendant. and
Yeah,
we're only gonna
I
have-
will just say, and I understand the argument both ways, but I have a number of friends who are seasonal residents here who are generally talked about having to pay a higher rate of tax, and to deny them access to one of the 4 beaches in the town, I think you can make the argument that that seems a little punitive.
They're second homeowners, they can get a beach sticker.
Well,
They
yeah,
get
Non-resident.
yeah, I think if they're taxpayers, they can.
If
Get
they're
it.
taxpayers, they can get a beach sticker.
okay, just,
Of course, the
No
question would then
carpetbaggers.
be, the question would then be the overall impact on difficult parking in terms of attracting tourists. But there's no way to know that.
Yeah,
Honest.
if Suzanne can give us if she can do some kind of breakdown, or if she has an idea, just a little bit more of an idea on that. I mean,
I
yeah.
don't really understand it as we sit, so it would be nice to have a little clarification.
Okay. so
Yeah,
we're
and if
gonna-
it means more money for the town, I'm for that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's all about the money.
Kathy, do you have a
so
sense of when the next meeting will be?
I'm going to go to that right now if we're all done with the warrant. Richard,
We
you
are.
satisfied with that and everything, and we'll take to the next. So here's what, and I need Karen kind of to look at this. So the agenda item on the next meeting is I was looking at, because we are going to have to choose whether we want the second, and Karen, if you're on there, we need the second or the 4th Thursdays. So what I kind of wanted to do is I wanted to pick an off time meeting for the next meeting. So I was looking at September 7th, but that might conflict with Karen and her planning board meetings.
Right.
September 7th is the date of the Wellfleet Community Forum. They're having the special pre-town meeting and the Morris Campground Working Group presentation.
Cool.
We can meet the night after that on Thursday. That would be
Do you wanna
great.
do you want to do the Tuesday before or the Thursday before? And again,
Well, we gotta be careful with the Tuesdays, because
We
it's
do the
select board,
Thursday,
but-
it'll be after that presentation, and who knows what might come out of
That's a really good point. Karen, can you do Thursday, the 8th?
I personally can, but I have to call the ACC and see if it's available. That's the caveat now.
Okay.
Are you
well,
gonna have in person or are you gonna have Zoom?
So we can we can start to do, this is another discussion. So let's see, let's shoot for the 8th. Do you want to do it Zoomy Zoom?
Which is easier to get, which is easier for Karen?
Zoom.
Okay.
September
Zoom is fine.
8th, do Zoom.
Let's do the 8th. Let's leave the 8th Zoom because we'll see
Zoom.
each other on the 10th.
Okay,
So Karen will look and see if the 8th is available and send us.
We should be
all the-
okay.
And send us
If
all.
we
a-
do Zoom, we should be fine.
okay.
great. Okay.
Now my next question is, going forward, do you want to talk about the rest of the stuff on the 8th? Because we're gonna have to pick the 2nd or the 4th Wednesdays. So we don't conflict with planning. So we can talk about liaisons, strategic planning and correspondence. We don't have any correspondence. I'm assuming if we do, we'll move it to next meeting, but we can get all of this done, I think, in the next meeting on the 8th.
I think that's great. We'll be fresher and we don't have that many presentations, so that'll be
No,
fun.
and we have a lot of more time to talk about the campground and there'll be a lot more information. Anybody
Exactly.
opposed to that? Anybody opposed to that?
No.
No, we'll have dinner.
Questions, final comments?
I just want to say thank you, Rich. This was our first FinCom meeting where you were like fully in charge and you did a great job, and thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
And we should have gone around and introduced everybody, but I knew I wanted to get through. it.
No,
I think I met you guys a couple of times.
We've met, yeah.
I do just want to make sure that you guys post an agenda for September 10th as well. You're rattling off a couple of dates that week, but September 10th, special town meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, we need, we don't need an agenda for that. When you say agenda, we don't need anything for that, do we? The
I believe
warrant's
you
already
just gotta
done.
post a meeting for it, I believe.
Is it going to be outside or in the gym?
The select board had voted to hold it outside per the suggestion of the moderator.
Okay.
We typically can have like an emergency short meeting before town meeting in the school. We've done that.
Yeah, we've done that before,
in the library.
in the little chairs.
The
Yeah,
tiny
Alright,
Tracy
so we
suggesting
will
posting.
shoot for the 8th and we'll finish up the rest of that business. I'll work on an agenda. Thank you guys for not beating me up on my first meeting.
No, you did great, Kathy.
You
Thank
did
you.
fine. You're
did
better than
great.
Fred.
Yeah, way better than
No,
Fred.
nobody's better than Fred.
Fred,
Little
You
less
guys,
wordy
yeah,
there.
wait a
Thank
second.
you,
You
Kathy.
guys never willingly went past 9 o'clock for me ever. So I want to say, great job, Kathy, your first meeting. You landed up your
Don't
feet.
go past 9. ever again.
9:20,
I did.
Yeah, right,
9:20.
Past 9.
Here's your
Oh,
caveat, Kathy. You got one night free. Don't go past 9 after
You guys
that.
are cutting into my drinking time and I
Good
gotta be
night,
up early
everyone.
tomorrow.
Good night.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Yeah.
so moved.
Yes,
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
second, aye.
Good night.
Good
Hi.
night.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Aye.